We are in Las Vegas, Nevada, and Nick, our protagonist, takes a drink at the bar when a beautiful woman appears, catching his attention. Her name is Dee Dee, and she's there to meet a man she calls G, a dealer who is in love with her and wants her to move in with him. But Dee Dee isn't sure about this, and she's arranged the meeting to break off the supposed relationship they've been having. Meanwhile, Nick is drunk and can't take his eyes off Dee Dee, so he approaches her to invite her for a drink, causing an argument and scaring the couple away. However, Nick hasn't finished pursuing Dee Dee. He follows her to the parking lot, where G gets fed up with his behavior and beats him until he's lying on the ground. Seeing how brave G was and the beating he gave the troublemaker, Dee Dee is very impressed and accepts his proposal to go live with him. While all of this is happening, we see a girl being abandoned at the entrance to a hospital emergency room. The young woman has been brutally beaten, and the only thing she can say while they attend to her is, "Nick." The next morning, Nick meets with his partner, Pinky, a lawyer, who gives him the payment G sent. Just then, a young man arrives at the office. His name is Cyrus, and he's looking for a professional bodyguard who can protect him while he stays in the city. He's heard that Nick is the best. After negotiating the price, Nick agrees to meet him that evening and escort him while he visits several casinos to gamble, because that's Cyrus's vice. A few hours later, the protagonist visits Holly, the woman who was treated at the hospital the night before. When he sees what they did to her, he asks if she remembers anything about the person who attacked her. She tells him that everything happened in an elevator, where some men invited her to a party. But when she arrived, there was no one in the apartment. After that, they drugged her and abused her. Nick listens patiently to every detail about these men, then asks her the name of the hotel and leaves. An hour later, he's already at the hotel where he meets Millie, his friend who works as a maid. He asks her about the men and the room they're staying in. She tells him her shift has just started and she hasn't had the chance to make her rounds yet. So she says she'll see him at his favorite restaurant after her shift ends. There, Nick learns the name of the attacker, Danny DeMarco, the son of an Italian mobster who has come to the city to have fun. He's always accompanied by two huge bodyguards. Next, Nick calls Holly and lies, telling her he hasn't found anything about the culprit because he's not confident he can beat them. However, she knows him so well that she realizes he's lying. Knowing that Nick cares about her, she tells him more details about what Danny did to her, hoping to enrage him enough to take action. That night, Nick arrives for his job with Cyrus, who, despite seeming too young to gamble, has a talent for the games and wins some money. However, the night is long because he only bets the minimum. After a couple of hours, Nick gets fed up waiting for Cyrus to finish his bets and leaves, taking only half the agreed fee. He then goes to see Holly, who finally convinces him to help her get her revenge. Nick decides to act. He goes to Danny's suite under the pretense of wanting to do business, but quickly shows them why he's really there, provoking Danny's anger. Danny points a gun at him and threatens to break all his bones as a message for Holly. In an instant, Nick reacts by kicking one bodyguard's leg so hard that he fractures it. Then he uses a credit card he sharpened to cut the other man's forehead and continue the fight. After he's in control of the situation, Nick alerts Holly, who arrives at the hotel to exact her revenge on Danny, who is tied to a chair. Holly strips her attacker, then pulls a pruning shear out of her purse and begins to slice away at Danny's manhood. Piece by piece, Danny screams in pain with each cut Holly makes. Then she demands a sincere apology. The once brave mobster ends up crying and begging for forgiveness like a child. Now that she's finally satisfied with her revenge, Holly realizes she must leave the city as quickly as possible. Fortunately, Nick found $50,000 in a drawer and gives her half so she can start over. Nick, on the other hand, feels lucky and goes to a casino with his share of the money, where he meets Cyrus, who accompanies him to what Nick calls the last game of his life, since he plans to leave the city that night. After a few hours, he has turned his $25,000 into more than $500,000, an amount of money he has dreamt of for years. Enough to live a good life somewhere quiet, away from the troubles of Las Vegas. However, fate has strange ways of playing with us. And just as Nick is about to cash in his winnings, he has a strong feeling that he isn't doing the right thing. Something inside tells him to keep playing, so he goes to a VIP table where there is no betting limit, determined to keep gambling until he has enough money never to worry about price tags again. The protagonist bets all his money on a single hand of blackjack, and after a tense series of plays, he loses all his winnings, plus the initial $25,000 he took from Danny's suite. Devastated by what just happened, Nick vents his anger and then drinks himself into unconsciousness. Hours later, he wakes up in Cyrus's apartment. Cyrus confesses that he hasn't really come to Las Vegas just to gamble. He's come so Nick can teach him to be brave and risk his life and everything he owns, just like Nick did at the blackjack table. After that, he says money is no problem and offers to make Nick a rich man if he helps him become as brave as Nick. He's tired of living in constant fear. Nick refuses and goes back to the casino to keep drinking, where some men approach him and ask him to come with them, saying Danny is eager to speak with him. Hearing that name, Nick reacts by attacking the men, but more of them appear, setting off a long fight. After an intense struggle in which Nick seems to be the victor, more men arrive. These ones are armed and don't plan to waste time fighting him, so they just point their guns at his head and take him to their boss. This boss is a man they call Baby, the owner of the hotel where Nick attacked Danny. Baby reveals that the mob contacted him looking for the man who attacked one of their own. Not only that, this man also supposedly killed the victim's bodyguards. We learn that Danny killed his own bodyguards after Nick left, so they couldn't reveal how he had cried like a child while Holly threatened him. Baby appears to be Nick's friend, saying he will take Nick to see Danny. If Nick can prove his innocence, he can go without punishment. But upon arriving, Nick notices a chair and plastic underneath it. Never a good sign. Nick confesses to Baby what really happened and then bets his life that Danny can't explain how Nick murdered his bodyguards. Danny, eager to see Nick executed, tells Baby that Nick shot them in cold blood and then made fun of him afterward. Baby doesn't believe him because, in all the years he's done business with Nick, Nick has never used a gun. He despises them, ever since losing someone dear to him. Having lost Baby's support, Danny leaves, promising that when his men arrive in the city, he himself will take care of killing Nick and then come for Baby. After narrowly avoiding death again, Nick must leave the city. However, he has no money and no idea how to quickly get it. Luckily for him, Cyrus is still in town and has come to say goodbye. But first, Cyrus shares a bit of his story. By the age of 19, he had already made $7 million with his computer company. Yet now that he's approaching 30, he's never been near a fight, nor a girl, nor anything exciting. In reality, he has all the money most could only dream of, but he's never truly lived to the fullest for even one day. That's why he looked into Nick's life and discovered that he has really lived, having been dealt a force and gone on adventures. Cyrus just wants to experience a bit of that. He then hands Nick an envelope containing a plane ticket and a check for $500,000. All this if he agrees to come with him and teach him how to live his life to the fullest. Nick has just received the offer of a lifetime. All he's ever wanted is enough money to live well, and now there's a cowardly kid beside him offering that and more, just to be his mentor. The only problem is the man who just arrived at the cafe, who has come to kill him. Danny approaches with his men, ready to tear Nick apart. Luckily, Cyrus creates a distraction, buying Nick enough time to escape out the back door and manage to hide on the roof from where he hears Danny put a price on his head. Nick plans to remain hidden, but everything changes when Danny orders his men to go back and kill Cyrus, leaving him no choice but to intervene to save him. Using only a spoon and a fork taken from the cafe, Nick kills all of Danny's men. Then when Danny himself attacks, Nick drives the fork into his hand, then pushes him away and drives the spoon into his throat, killing him for good. When Nick returns to his car, Cyrus is waiting to tell him that creating that distraction for those thugs was the bravest thing he's ever done in his life. And it's all thanks to Nick. Because of this, he gives Nick the check back and thanks him for the opportunity. With the easiest $500,000 he's ever made, Nick finally leaves Las Vegas, leaving behind a life of trouble, fully committed to living in peace from now on, at least until the money runs out and he has to return.
If you want interesting movie recaps, like, share, and subscribe to follow us for more movie recaps.